The minute we left air yesterday, it was the busiest football transaction deadline day in the history of the sport. 10 trades, and the Miami Dolphins are all in. And
F them picks, Dan.
Man.
F them picks.
They have said we've got the top-rated quarterback, we've got an exciting offense, we've got an old owner who has had nothing but messes at every turn in his life, and in his life as Dolphins owner, I should say. And now they are saying we are making the moves to counter the Buffalo Bills. We need to get pressure with 4. We're trading a first-round pick. That's a lot for Bradley Chubb. Pass rushers are tough to come by. They get rid of Chase Edmonds and replace him with a guy from San Francisco and Jeff Wilson. And I don't know if they should be all in, but I'm not going to condemn them for finally having a reason to hope and finally having a fan base that's excited. It seems short-sighted, but I'm not sure that short-sighted isn't the move right now with your audience craving something that feels better than the last 20 years.
And I don't think that they've really mortgaged too much of their future because ultimately they're going to have Tua as their quarterback for at least the next 2 seasons. And so as long as you have him on a relatively cheap deal, why not? You're not going to draft his replacement after how well he's played this year. He's more than earned his role in next year's team. You feel like you have a chance to compete, and I think Mike McDaniel probably looked at, and the numbers are very clear as to what their 2 deficiencies are. Getting pass rush with 4, they're a bottom 4 team in the league and getting pass rush with 4, and they can't blitz like they used to because they haven't had their healthy star corners all year. That's actually been the low-key part of their defensive struggles is they haven't had Byron Jones healthy and Xavier Howard has missed games. And then from an offensive standpoint, I actually think it's funny. So we've talked about Mike McDaniel as struggling to get this running game online. He hasn't been able to do it so far. And yet, if you look at the numbers, the advanced stats, the Miami Dolphins actually have a running game that is creating chances for their running backs. Their running backs just aren't taking them. If you look at the stats, there's a stat called rushing yards above expected. The Dolphins are dead last by a mile in the league. They actually have the 2 individual running backs that should be averaging the most yards per carry based off the blocking in the scheme. So Mike McDaniel is actually doing his job, and he's basically saying, I'm going to get a running back in that will do his job.
I think an interesting point you make, Dan, is like, oh, are they all in? Should they be all in? I'm sure Chris Greer, Mike McDaniel's looking across the AFC being, man, this was going to be a tough conference when the season started. And they're looking around saying, who's really the competition? The Chiefs and the Bills? Is that really it?
And the Ravens, I think.
Okay, but you beat the Ravens. You beat the Bills.
In fluky fashion, but yes.
Okay, but
both in fluky fashion.
Both in fluky fashion, of course. But if you already beat those guys and those are the people above you, you're like, hey, I think we can make a run to the Super Bowl.
Let's address our weaknesses and let's go for it.
Who was in the Super Bowl last year? The Bengals. Were they the best team in the AFC? No, they just got hot at the right time, had pieces that mix, and all of a sudden now they're not there too. Jamar Chase is out. Like, this is an open AFC.
Edmonds got traded the moment that he missed the hole that was available to him that got McDaniel criticized for 4th and 3, up 16-10, not kicking a field goal.
Did McDaniel text you that stat, Whitty, to repeat on air?
No, I saw it was going around yesterday on the internet, the NFL Next Gen Stats stat, and there's this really funny graphic that somebody put up which compared actual yards per carry against the NFL Next Gen Stats expected yards per carry. Chase Edmonds averages 3 yards a carry. He was expected to average 5 yards a carry. On the continuum of NFL running backs, he is by far the worst in terms of that stat. He's left, according to this stat, 100 yards on the table this season. And no other team has left 100 yards on the table this season. It's kind of insane. So to me, the idea that the Miami Dolphins actually could have a good running game if someone just went in there and did their job, I think it's kind of cool they went on and attempted to at least address their 2 primary issues.
How do they calculate that?
So, I mean, at NFL, I actually don't know how good this stat is. It sounds cool. No, and NFL Next Gen Stats is behind it.
Not cited either.
But they basically sort of determine based off blocking, based off scheme, based off runs, and they have presumably thousands and thousands of runs of worth of data. They determine that an average running back would get 100 more yards than they have. It's sort of like expected
quantified shot quality.
Exactly.
In basketball.
In the NBA, yeah.
Let's talk about what they did, though. Chase Edmonds gets traded to San Francisco, and they're getting a guy from the McDaniel system. I'm assuming that Jeff Wilson is going to be a piece. If McCaffrey can fit immediately in San Francisco, I'm assuming that this will be an easy transition for Jeff Wilson. It's a recreation of what San Francisco did without these receivers, right? This is an offense that is as explosive as any in the league. And the thing that I wanted to ask you guys, and I wanted to ask Amin as somebody who works in a front office, a lot of people are pointing out either one of the following: that in allowing San Francisco to trade up for Trey Lance, what the Dolphins got for that was Hill, Waddle, and now Chubb with the picks that were available to them. Another way that it was put is that for Laramie Tunsil, because Laramie Tunsil ended up dropping in the draft because of the gas mask marijuana thing, Laramie Tunsil, when he gets traded to Houston, has then resulted in not just, circuitously, not just Hill and Waddle and Chubb, but also Holland. And if I tell you that those are the players that you're getting with the first round picks, if that's the kind of production that you can get, you're right, Whitty, when you say the Dolphins aren't doing this for 5 years from now. They're doing it for the years when they have the value at quarterback because Tua is cheap. They are doing it for the next couple of years of an 80-year-old owner's, more than 80-year-old owner's life. He's desperate to be somebody who's a winner. And when you're trying in the offseason and making a mess by going after Tom Brady at 45, you see the desperation in this. And I don't think it's bad to be desperate. I just don't think that still they're as good as Buffalo.
Well, which is the ultimate kind of hole in this plan. If they were in the NFC, I think they could have very easily vaulted themselves into being a genuine contender. You're basically only competing with the Eagles at that point. But because you have Buffalo and Kansas City in the way, and also Buffalo represents a division. So the Dolphins, even they could have an amazing season. They go 12-5, 13-4. They'd still spend the entire playoffs on the road. And that is a concern for me in this all-in plan. But I don't think you can question them at all. This was sort of in some ways the genius of the tanking plan. They only really had to tank for a year, and they traded Laramie Tunsil. They turned him into 2 first-round picks, and they kept basically giving themselves lottery tickets. If not for the Tom Brady investigation resulting in them being docked a first-round pick, they would still have a first-round pick. They've given up basically the capital from 2 trades, Laramie Tunsil and Trey Lance. And those 2 trades have been unbelievable for the Dolphins, both in terms of building out their core and giving them the chance to go all the way in. They nailed the Tyreek Hill trade. The Bradley Chubb trade, I think, comes with some real concern. He only played 25 games in his first 3 seasons. Genuine health problems. Has only really lived up to the talent in this season. Pro Football Focus, I think, has him as the 3rd best edge rusher in the league this year. His pass rush win rate from ESPN is very high as well. So I think that Bradley Chubb doesn't have a huge track record, but he's been good this year. However, you are basically given all this latitude by 2 trades, which were absolute steals for the Dolphins. They've turned themselves into a genuine contender off the back of, let's just cash in our bad team into something that can provide real yields in the future.